Hello everyone joining us today for this workshop on how to build the classic Snake game using Lightning Web Components. The goal of today's workshop is to show you how you can leverage the features of the Lightning Web Components to create any application for that matter. We chose Snake game because it's interesting and it's one of the classic games. And I believe most of you people might want to learn how to create game as well. So it's like two birds in one shot. We are trying to create a Snake game. At the same time, we are also trying to learn the Lightning Web Components. I'm Satya Sekhar, Senior Developer Evangelist, working with APAC Developer Relations Team, Salesforce. My goal is to find the easy and interesting ways to develop the application. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Aditya Nag, who is a lead developer evangelist from our team. And yeah, he'll be with us. Hi, Aditya, you there?
Hey Satya, I'm here. Hi everyone, welcome to the workshop. Hope you all like it, enjoy it, and learn something in the process.
Cool, thank you. So before we start our workshop, let me make sure that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. So if you're planning to make any purchase decisions, please base your decisions only on what are currently available on the platform. So I'm going to talk about Lightning Web Components, which means I'm going to talk about the web standards, which means we'll also talk about how the web standards have evolved over a period of time. So during 2014, that's the time when most of the JavaScript frameworks have cropped up. That's all because the standards were not so great during that period. If you see on the screen, you can see an orange rectangle at the bottom. So these are the standards at that point of time. And most of the features are to be implemented by the JavaScript framework. For instance, you can see the features that are represented in the green box there are all the features that are implemented by different JavaScript frameworks, due to which there was a lot of proliferation, independent implementations, which really doesn't match with each other. That's when the standards committees like W3C and ECMAScript standards committee have come into play, and they started creating the web standards. By year 2019, this is the web stack that you can see there is a drastical change. Most of the features which earlier used to be implemented by the JavaScript framework are now part of the standards itself. So now the JavaScript framework only need to implement only few of the features by themselves, and then they can rely on most of the features. They can rely on the standards itself for the most of the features. And Salesforce is one of the very initial organizations which adopted those standards, and we have built our stack. So here you can see in blue box, that's what is implemented by the Salesforce platform. But yeah, it adopted all the standards. It not just adopted the standards, but Salesforce is also one of the sitting members of both the standard committees, W3C as well as the ECMAScript. That's where we try to adapt the standards as early as possible. And not only that, we also open sourced our framework. So while we are adapting the standards there and building a very nice framework for you to build the applications, we also open sourced it so that you can also contribute. You can also use this framework in any of the along with any of the JavaScript or cloud computing frameworks, whichever you want to use it with. But what are Lightning Web Components at first place? So Lightning Web Components are based on HTML Web Components. So Web Components is one of the standard HTML concepts with which you can create the custom elements. You know that HTML has the standard elements. You can also create the custom elements. So over this Web Components, we have built a very thin layer of framework, and we call it as Lightning Web Components framework. So this framework only created the polyfills or the gaps that were not available within the standards. So it's a thin layer, but our goal is to make it even thinner. So as we go down, as these standards evolve more and more, these standards will be adopted, and the implementation on the framework side will be as less as possible. And today we are going to see how we can use this framework for building the applications very easily, and what are the different types of applications that we can build and how it can contribute to the open source community. I'd like Aditya to talk more about it.
Sure. So I mean, this is what our architects say, that it's eventually going to disappear. But one important thing to notice, I mean, all of you might have already gotten this question around why have we created one new framework when there are already other frameworks out there? So the answer for that is ours is one of the very few which is really enterprise ready. So if you look at the requirements of an enterprise ready software, they're a bit different from what you have for a traditional software that you can use to develop small applications, because enterprise apps have different requirements. And some of those requirements are like backwards compatibility, security, accessibility. There are a bunch of things that a software has to have to be able to build enterprise products. So that is where LWC really stands out. And in the next slide, you can really see what we are doing with this framework. So the framework itself is open source, and to build products using this framework, you can actually use any tool from the open source community. So we are not walling you into proprietary stuff. So if you want to build your application, you can use Webpack, Rollup, TypeScript, anything that you want, you can use to build your apps. To test, you can use Jest, Jasmine, any of the front-end JavaScript testing frameworks you can use. And of course, we've already established that you can deploy the apps literally anywhere. And today in this workshop, we are actually going to try and deploy the game to GitHub pages because it is, I think, by far the easiest deployment. You just need to push the code to GitHub and enable GitHub pages, and all of it works. So we are going to do that today. And what can you really build with Lightning Web Components? I mean, this is a framework for the, it's a UI framework essentially. So you can build UI applications, and those UI applications can be web pages or reusable components. So in the name Lightning Web Components, you see we are using the Web Components standard. So you can build a component and push it to the NPM registry so that others can use it. Or you can give it out as a JavaScript file for people to embed it in their own websites. There are a bunch of different stuff you can do with LWC. The next one is you can build single page applications and progressive web applications. So when I say web pages, it can be normal static web pages, dynamic web pages, documentation websites. And then when it comes to single page applications, it can really be anything ranging from the most popular examples, Facebook, YouTube. All of those are kind of like single page applications. So you can build those with Lightning Web Components. And finally, you can also build desktop and mobile apps. And you can build these using other open source tools, like you have Electron to create desktop apps and Cordova to create mobile apps. So you can use those two to create desktop and mobile apps. So I told you LWC was enterprise ready. So we ourselves at Salesforce are using it quite a lot. So much to the fact that our entire Salesforce CRM, that is the world's #1 CRM, has completely been migrated to use Lightning Web Components. So all of our customers and millions of users that are logging in daily to Salesforce, they're actually using Lightning Web Components. And after we've migrated our entire CRM to Web Components, customers felt very happy because of the increase in performance and all of the other benefits that a standards-based framework can offer them. So yeah, we have scaled. It is, I think, a shining example of how scalable the framework is. And I also spoke that, okay, Salesforce CRM, by the way, is a single page application, just like, Facebook. So the developer website. So I also mentioned that with LWC, you can build websites. And we are also in the process of migrating our entire websites to Lightning Web Components. And we are doing the Salesforce developer website right now. So from the current framework or from the current infrastructure, we are moving the website completely to use web components. And that's a good amount of effort we are spending to see long-term benefits. And finally, what we have seen our community do is, I mean, it never even crossed our mind like 2-3 months ago. But then we realized the community has started building games on web components. So they build games like chess, Snake, tic-tac-toe, pretty basic games. I wouldn't call this to be in the range of PUBG or Among Us or things like that. But pretty basic games you can definitely build using web components. So that is what we are going to do today. We are going to build a Snake game, and the real intention behind that is, um, I think instead of building regular applications, I think if you build a game that is more interesting and it stays with you for quite a long time. So that way, we thought to learn LWC, giving the example of a game is very good because it uses all of the principles Lightning Web Component has to offer, as well as you get to build something fun that you can use on a day-to-day basis. And I already mentioned that we are using it actively on the Salesforce platform. So in the next slide, what you'll really see are the numbers behind it. We love web components. Our customers love web components. So much to the fact that we launched it in January 2019, and more than 5 million web components have been built by our customers. And since we open sourced it in May 2019, that was like 5 months after we launched it, we have around 6,000 weekly package downloads. What it means is weekly, at least 6,000 people are actually building one app with Lightning Web Components. So 6,000 apps per week is what you can imagine this to be. And because of the fact that it is open source, we always welcome issues, contributions in the form of pull requests. So that is one of the advantages of open sourcing the software. You as the end users get to influence our roadmap. So if you want to see any feature built, you can actually submit it as an issue. You want us to fix a bug, you can do that. Actually, you can fix that bug and submit a pull request to us as well. So we are quite open to contributions, so do check it out. And yeah, I think that is, oh, there is one more interesting thing. So with web components, like I said, we are doing quite a lot of things. And one of those initiatives that we done recently in the light of we staying at home for 6 months is build this new suite of tools called FOSTIV, which stands for Free and Open Source Tools for Incredible Virtual Events. So what we've done is we've built a couple of tools that you can use to run any of your virtual events that you're hosting or participating in. So feel free to suggest these tools to the organizers, use them, share, spread, and contribute. So some of the apps that I want to draw your attention to is the quiz app. So those of you who have already used Kahoot, it's a multiplayer quiz, which is kind of like fastest fingers first. So the exact same thing we were able to replicate using Salesforce and Heroku, and we built it with Lightning Web Components. And it's also, by the way, all of these tools are completely open source and free to use. And some of you might be wondering if it is deployed on Salesforce and Heroku, is it going to be paid? Absolutely not, because Salesforce and Heroku, both of them have free offerings. And I mean, Salesforce does a lot of events, our community does a lot of events. And over the past 6 months, I think literally thousands and thousands of people have used this quiz app and conducted their online events. So it's all working really well. Then we also built the emote widget. So this is a way to add a little bit interactivity. This is actually a very simple tag that you can place on any website that you want, static, dynamic, anywhere basically. It's a HTML tag, put it wherever you want, and then this beautiful widget comes up and you can click any of these reaction icons and then others get to see how many reactions have come. Basically, it's a way to share how you feel with everyone else who's attending the event along with you. It's also built with Lightning Web Components, so check it out. Same is the case with GIF booth. Basically, it is kind of like photo booth where you can make funny faces and it creates a GIF of all of the members who are in an event and then you can share it across. It's a pretty cool thing to have. I mean, you would have seen something like this in the Apple keynote, I guess, where the speaker is speaking and in their background, there is a whole bunch of videos where people are talking, doing whatever they want. So you can kind of use this to be a green screen background to add sort of that fun element to your events. So check out all of this on github.com/FOSTIV. Like I mentioned, use it, suggest new tool ideas that you want us to build, and we are going to build it for you. Or if you can build them for us, we are more than happy to accept your pull requests. So that is enough
Yeah.
talk. This was supposed to be a hands-on workshop.
That's
So
what I was trying to tell. Thank you, Aditya. So me and Aditya can speak for hours together on Lighting Web Components if we leave us to speak. So that's how it is, like, the platform itself. So interesting. But yeah, as Aditya said, this is the hands-on workshop. We'll do more hands-on and less talking. So it's time for coding. So what we are going to do now is we will share a quick document with you. We'll share a link, okay, where we are going to provide you all the steps that we are going to do in advance. I'll be explaining each of those steps, or Aditya will be explaining each of those steps again. And you can just follow those steps literally, understand the concept, learn the concept, follow the steps, and do the hands-on along with us. So we have all time, the complete time of the workshop with us to work, so we can get started. Let me quickly share the link. Allow me a second. So if you have any questions also, you can always post your questions in the chat window. This is where I'm sharing the link. Let me share it on. Did you get the link, or am I posting it to only one person? Just a
you didn't send it to
second.
everyone, Satya.
Everyone, let me send it again. 1 second. Hopefully it should be there with you all now.
That is everyone in the meeting room. I'll post it to everyone in the meeting. Okay, this is the wrong link.
Okay. Oh, that was the waiting room, is it?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not allowed to copy links. So Satya, you need to select everyone.
No. In fact, you posted it, Aditya. I think everyone should be able to access it now.
I posted.
Can you confirm?
I posted a developer newsletter, so you need to post.
Okay. Okay. I'll post it again. I'll post the quick link.
And select everyone in meeting.
Yeah, I'll do that. So that is the link that Aditya posted just now. Is the blog post? Yep.
Yeah, it is. It is irrelevant for today's meeting. I was doing something else and that got copied. But
sorry about it. No worries. So here is the quick link. Please access this link and also confirm if you are able to access the link so that I can get started with our workshop.
Yeah. So basically, we have given out this guide so that if some of you are not able to follow us, you can easily refer to this document. But you can generally look at us building the app and you can follow along as well. So this is just for your reference, which you can even use after the workshop is done. So we'll get started, Satya, now.
Awesome. So yeah, I in fact zoomed it a little bit. Hopefully you should be able to see it clearly now. So today's objective is pretty simple. We are going to use the open source web components, which is based on the latest web standards, and build the application. That's it. And introduction about the Lighting Web Components. That's what we already done in our slide presentation there. But what are Lighting Web Components? In short, if I'll have to say, we are going to create the custom elements. So in HTML you have the standard elements. Each element provides a kind or the other kind of functionality. For instance, we have head, body, and all. So we are going to create an element by ourselves, and that element will come with the functionality, and we can place that element in the HTML document. Before we begin the workshop, there's a little bit of setup that we'll all have to do. So I just want to ask a couple of questions. You can just answer yes or no for each of the question in the chat window so that I understand that you already know the concepts there. So have you ever used Git for storing your repository? Do you work on Git regularly? Okay, I'm seeing all the else, which means, yeah, my job is made simple. Great. Now, my next question is, have you used Visual Studio Code? Okay. except for a couple of people. Most of you already know Visual Studio Code. Okay. Now my third question, how many of you have used Node.js? Did you use Node.js ever? Cool. So many no nevers, no worries. So you'll see how we can use it today. It's pretty easy. So the first thing, so most of you already have Git. So I don't think I need to tell more about GitHub. But in short, GitHub is a website or a place where you can store all your repositories, and Git is your version control system. So you can use the Git for managing, maintaining your source code, and then you can store all your source code in the GitHub. So make sure that you have a GitHub account, because towards the end of the workshop, we are going to commit all our code in the GitHub account. And from there, by creating the GitHub pages, we'll also start playing with the game that we are going to build today. And yeah, so here you can see this is a link in the document. If I click on Git, it opens the site from where you can download the Git if you have not already done so. But because all of you know, hopefully everyone has downloaded from there. So you can just verify that by typing this command in your terminal. So I can open my terminal here. Okay, so I can check the command. I can run this command. I can copy paste the command from here. So let me copy it. So most of the workshop you can copy from here and paste it, and then it should be up. Oops. Sorry for that star. Just remove those star there. Git minus version. So it should show some version there. Great. You have the latest version than me, Vikrant. Awesome. So everyone can check this by running this command. And if you can see some output there, that means you already have the Git installed. Similarly, for the people who have not used Visual Studio Code, you can click this Visual Studio Code link. It will take you to the Visual Studio Code page from where you can download the respective VS Code. So if you are using Windows, then here it shows the download for Windows. Because I'm using Mac, it shows download for Mac there.
Yeah, one quick note about Visual Studio Code is that it is our preferred IDE to build apps, but in no way it is the only thing that we recommend. So if you want to use your own IDE, feel free to do that. Things like Eclipse or Visual Studio or IntelliJ, it's totally up to you. Even if you want to use Notepad++, that is also okay.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
it's pretty open. Like I showed you in the slide, you can use anything that you want to build apps.
Right. You can literally use any tool of your choice. Visual Studio Code. Yeah, I like that Adam, who is Pankaj. Okay, even Adam IDE, but he says VS Code is best. Obviously, yes. I like VS Code because it's lightweight and you can instantly enable it to develop application on any platform. For instance, if I'm working on Java and I want to work on Salesforce, I can just put a plugin there and I can start working on it. Pritesh recording, I need to once check with them, and if possible, we'll definitely share. And then you have Node.js. You can just confirm. So if everyone has Visual Studio Code with you, you can just say yes in the chat window so that I'll get to know that you have VS Code set up. Great. And for those who are working on Windows, and if you have some issue with the command, then Git for Windows is one best tool which you can install, which enables you to run the Git commands right from the command prompt. Great. Yeah, Pankaj, I love this. Pankaj says those who don't have Visual Studio Code, please do it. You'll love it. Okay. So similarly, the third thing, yeah, doing it now, Subarao, that's great. So let's wait for some people to download the Visual Studio Code. Once you are done with your Visual Studio Code, we'll go with the next step. Let's give them a couple of minutes.
Yeah, in the meanwhile, whoever has Visual Studio Code, please download Node.js. Make sure you download the LTS version. And in case you have all of these prerequisites installed, then let's wait for others in this call to complete the installation.
Yeah. To do that, again, you can click on this node.js link here. When you click this link, it will take you to the page from where you can download the LTS version, as Aditya said. So you have two versions here. Don't really get confused, because most of you I know are very much new to the Node.js. And in fact, today we are not here to learn Node, but we are going to use Node even if we don't know Node. You can see how easy it is to use Node.js there. But yeah, you have two versions. One version is the current version, which is the latest, but it might have some beta features. So the preferred version is the long-term support version, LTS version. So you download the LTS version from here. Let's wait for all to install the complete setup so that you can follow us on hands-on. Excellent, Pankaj. So Pankaj says that you really need not open the command prompt. You can run the commands right from your Visual Studio Code terminal. Yes, we are going to do that. Great, Subbarao, for confirming that you have done the VS Code and now you are installing Node.js. Great. So let me accept a few of the people who are joining little late to workshop. Pankaj, it definitely helps. So we want the workshop to be as interactive as possible. So it's always good if you can help other people. That's what exactly we want. We want all of you to do hands-on and learn the concept and go with some knowledge about Lightning Web Components and how to build the games when you go out of this workshop. Those people who joined just now, let me share the link once again, the quick link. So I'll share a link to the document which you can follow, with which we are going to create the workshop. Let me quickly share it once again. Okay, those who have joined just now, this is a quick link. Please open that link and follow the instructions to install the basic tools that are required for today's workshop. So let's wait for a couple more minutes before confirming from all others that they have installed and set up the tooling and ready to code. Okay, so let's go ahead and start working.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, we are moving on. So in case, during the entire course of the workshop, if somebody is not able to follow us or we haven't waited long enough, that is why the guide is there. So you can actually catch up using the instructions in the guide.
Yeah, so we try to make the guide as simple as possible so that it will be easy for you to follow. So if you miss something at some point of coding as well, you can probably copy paste the code from the guide and follow on. Okay, so Aditya is going to get some more content into our guide here. So we can, yeah, thanks for getting that content here, Aditya. I believe everyone can see this content now. So what will you build and deploy? So let's try to understand the requirements for today's workshop. So we are going to use the Lightning Web Components open source framework to build our application. And our application name is Snake Game. Snake Game is not a new game. So this is one of the, I can say, a classic game, which means almost ancient, which is first created somewhere in late 70s, but it's a very interesting game. What are the fundamental rules for this game? So there will be a board in which the snake moves around, and the snake can move in any given direction. You can control the snake's movement with the direction keys. And while it moves, it can find some food and it eats the food. When it eats the food, the score will be increased for the player, and also the snake length will be increased. And the second requirement is the food has to be generated randomly, because the player will be using the direction keys to move the snake. He'll be going around in the board, and wherever he finds the food, he will try to go to that direction and eat the food so that he'll get more points. So we'll generate the food randomly. This is another requirement. The third requirement is, as I said just now, whenever the player eats, the snake eats food, the player gets a point for that. And how do we end the game? If the snake crosses, if the snake eats itself, okay, if the snake turns around and eats itself, the snake is going to die, which means the game will be end, and whatever points you would have earned till that point of time are your points. Okay, we have one question here before going forward. Satya, do you also have a sample for Pizza Game Live, fastest figure for Kahoot type? In fact, Aditya was showing one of the games there as part of our FOSTIV. So it is an open source GitHub repository. You can in fact check out the code. You can also make the changes. You can use that code, that application for any of your events. And yeah, thanks for sharing that link, Aditya. So that is the GitHub repository link. Okay, so these are the fundamental requirements for Snake Game. But what is our guiding principle for today? So we are going to make sure that when we are building the applications, when we are building the Snake application, we'll try not to manipulate the DOM from the JavaScript. Okay, most of the JavaScript frameworks, in fact, they manipulate the DOM from the JavaScript. So with the benefits of Lightning Web Components, we are going to use the Lightning Web Components features and directives with which we are going to do all the DOM related stuff within the HTML itself. So that is the guiding principle. And one more thing, so as you can build your Snake application using any of the other APIs, there are many APIs, and there are many sites, videos that are present on internet. When you type Snake Game, you Google, you'll find so many games there which are built using, most of the games are built using the Canvas API. Okay, we could have used the Canvas API, but whenever you want to access the contents of the Canvas, you'll have to use the API there and do that stuff. So in today's session, we are going to do it with the basic HTML and JavaScript using the Lightning Web Components framework. We are not going to use any API for that. And yeah, with that said, we can start building the game. So let's build. Let's start working on the game. I believe everyone is with me so far. So you already set up your tools and you're ready to do your hands-on. So here you can create a Lightning Web Components project using your own web packs. There are you can create your own web pack, but to make the things easier, what we have done is we have created a tool called Create LWC App. So this is a open source tool which is built on Node. So if you click this, it will take you to the Create LWC web app page where you can find more information about this app. So what this app does is it is going to set up a Lightning Web Components project for you. So you'll get all the boilerplate code ready, and then you can start working on that code. So without further ado, let's start creating the game. To do that, you can open your Visual Studio Code environment. So let me get into my Visual Studio Code environment. Here I am in my Visual Studio Code. Once you installed your Visual Studio Code, you will see this page for the very first time, the welcome page. You can close it. And at the same time, if you feel I'm going too slow in the workshop, you can just let me know. If you feel that I'm going too fast, you can stop me at any point of time. I'll try to reorient myself and slow down so that you all people can understand and follow with me. Pace is good. Thank you. So this is the Visual Studio Code environment. On the left side, you can see something called as activity bar, where you can see an explorer. So once you have your project created, you can see all your projects here. Okay, and not only that, as many of you people already put in the chat that you love Visual Studio Code. One major reason is, as I said, you have a marketplace here from where you can install any of the plugins for your requirements. Maybe work on Java, Python, whatever, you can do that. Likewise, there are other activities which you can launch from the activity bar. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Let's get started. As we work on it, we'll understand more about the Visual Studio Code itself and also the application. So this is the area where you can see the files. Currently, I have not created any project, any files, so I'm not seeing anything. And I think Pankaj or someone suggested there, we can run the Node.js commands right from the Visual Studio Code environment itself, rather than opening the command somewhere and then typing the command there. We can do from Visual Studio Code. So let's do that. Let's take that idea and do that. So here you can see a menu item called terminal, from where you can create a new terminal. So what it does is it opens a new terminal here and shows you the prompt where you can run the commands. And whenever you want, you can collapse this activity bar. Click this, you can collapse. And at the same time, Visual Studio Code provides a lot of shortcut commands. You can see all the shortcut command help here in the beginning page. So you can use the shortcut commands to launch your terminal or to open your activity bar or whatever you want to do. I will also, I'm also going to talk about a few of the shortcut commands as we progress with our workshop. Okay, so what we are going to do, let's go back to our document. Let me put these two things together. Okay, this is the browser. There's my document. Yep. So what I'll do is I'll bring my report here. Okay, so they are side by side. Now what we'll do is you can copy this npx create LWC app command and paste it here. Don't press enter yet. So what this command does is, so here I'm running something called as npx. npx is a tool which is available from your Node.js. If you are using Node.js 5.2 or greater, the tool is already with you. And this tool is going to run this webpack for you called create LWC app. And we are giving some name for our app. So we are calling the game itself as Snake Game. So what this tool does is it gives us a wizard, a simple steps. Once you fill those steps, your project structure is ready. So you can accept all the defaults while I explain each of those steps anyways. So now when you run this command, it is going to create all the necessary JavaScript modules or Node.js modules that are required to work. So you really need not worry about which module to import, which module to use and all. So the environment is completely set up for you once you run this command. So let's give it a couple of seconds so that it is going to fetch the tool for us, all the information, and gives us a wizard where we can enter some data. Yes, there we are. So it asks like, no, do you want to use this simple setup? You can just press enter. It accepts the default, which is yes. And then package name for the NPM, a Node Package Manager module. We'll accept default Snake Game itself. Just press enter. And then you can create 3 different types of applications. Aditya was talking about Electron, progressive app, web app in the slide, in the presentation. So here we'll take a simple standard web app. We'll create a standard web app. Again, we'll accept the default, press enter. Then for this Express API server, we'll use the basic one. Just press enter. Really need not worry about it. It creates at least a basic configuration file, if at all you want to use Express.js. If you want to control the parameters of Express.js, you can select Express.js there, in which case it creates server-side modules and client-side modules for you. But for our application, we'll take all the standard things. We'll keep it as simple as possible. Okay, once it is done, it gives you a message that it has created this game. At the bottom, you can see that message. It has created the game. So hopefully it is done for all. Let me know if it is not done. You want me to wait for some more time? I can wait, but let's go ahead and see what to do next. NPX is not recognized. Probably, did you install the latest version of Node.js, Subbarao? If you are not, then you can try installing Node.js or try setting up the Node.js path in your path variable, environment variable, if you are using the Windows system. So that way you'll be able to do that. Okay, so you can just follow on, but you'll have time if you like, no, just follow on, and then as we go on, you'll have time to install those things as well. We can wait for some time, don't worry. Let me finish this step. Yep, thanks for helping Amod and other people. You can also help Subbarao while we are learning this part of the workshop. So let's change the directory to the snake game directory, and then we are going to run a command called npm run watch. So what does npm run watch does is it is going to start a local development server so that you can deploy. It will be, your application will be automatically be deployed there, and you can dynamically make the changes in your application while noticing the changes in the local development server. Okay, rather than talking about it, let me show it to you in action. So let us change the directory. So let me, in fact, I can type the command, or I can copy it from here and paste the command here. And let me also maximize this terminal. Okay, and let me clear this terminal once so that you can see it clearly. I cleared the terminal. I'm pasting the command here and press enter. Okay, I have changed the directory. Now I'm going to run this command npm run watch. Okay, so let me paste the command here, npm run watch, and press enter. It is going to build your project and it is going to start the server. So now your server is there and up, and you can open the server and see the output in the browser. But before that, you may want to see the project file structure, right? So how do you do that? So you can go to the activity bar. Currently, no folder is open. We just created our folder. It should have created the project folder somewhere where you would have run the command. In my case, I created a OSA directory in which, or maybe, let me quickly check. I have done it in my folders itself. Okay. So we call it as snake game. Let me do one thing. Let me open a new terminal. You can also open a new terminal here if you want. Let me check the present working directory. It is in users as Saker. So let me open the folder from there. Wherever you have stored your file, you can open it from there. So I can see my folder here. Let me open. So once you open the folder, you should be able to see this project structure. Okay, let me know everyone if you are able to open the folder and see the project structure so that I can go ahead and explain that concept. Cool. There you are. This is a simple project structure where you have node modules. So when we have created the project using the create LWC app, it has populated all the required node modules which we can use in your application. So you need not really worry about it. What is more important is the source directory. Here you can see the modules directory where you can create your components. So if you'd have used Express.js, then you'll have a client directory and also server directory in which you can find the modules. So for now, we have modules directory here. In the modules directory, you can see a folder called my. This is a namespace. For that matter, you can use any namespace there. So I'm using a namespace so that I can easily identify the components which I have built. So we are giving the namespace a name called my, in which it comes with two sample components. There is one component called app, which is the actual application component. And there is a sample component called greeting. This is a component it has created. Like when you have run the tool, it has created a sample component so that you can, rather than writing your own component and start learning, you have at least one component in hand with which you can easily learn. And as I said, Lightning Web Components is based on web standards. And so when you want to build the application, here you're not going to build too many files. It's only a HTML file and JavaScript file and CSS file, like any other basic web application. So these are the three files. Let's examine one file here, HTML file. If you see the HTML file, this is the basic structure. So whatever component you create the component within the template tag. So what happens with the template tag is when you create the component and render this component as an custom element, as I said, this is going to convert into a custom element. For instance, here my component name is greeting, right? So this greeting component can be used in your HTML file, in any other HTML file, just by using a tag named greeting there. That's it. It's going to get converted to custom element. So this template will become your custom element. And whatever code you want to write, HTML code, you're going to write within the template. It is, again, here you can see I used a div. You can use paragraph, whatever HTML elements you want to use, you can use there. Not only the HTML standard elements, you can also use the HTML custom elements there. And then you have one file, at least a JavaScript file, which will have a import statement. So the basic bare minimum file will have an import statement, and then one class, which we'll learn more about that in our component when we create our own component. This is an example component. So just let's understand the file structure for now. So we can have a HTML file and a JavaScript file. In HTML file, we write all the user interface elements. In JavaScript file, we write the business logic. And we use the CSS file for styling. That's it. For now, if you understand that concept, that's great. And then how to use this component? So here we have an application component. Let me open application.html and let me close this terminal for now. In this, you can see I'm using a element here, a basic element. I call this element as my minus greeting. Okay, I'm just using this element, the current greeting element here. So if you notice, there is a naming convention. So here I called it as my minus greeting, where my is my namespace. Within that namespace, I have the greeting component. So this is how you use. So for instance, if you create hello component, it becomes my minus hello there. Great. Now let's see it in action. Let me open the terminal. So here, if you already, if it's not running, you can again run the npm run watch. Let's go back here and let us copy this command, npm run watch. If it's already running, you can say Control C and again run it. Okay, so it will show you the URL. You can click Control and click this URL if you're using Windows, or if you're using Mac, you can say Command click. It will open that URL in your web, in your browser. And here you can see your greeting component. So it is showing greeting in different languages. That's exactly what we have in our greeting component. If you see the greeting business logic, you have greetings in different languages, and it is showing that in different languages. So what I want to do here is I want to build the component and dynamically see the changes. So what we'll do is we'll adjust it a little bit. Let me take this tab out and let me bring this tab to the near my Visual Studio Code environment. Let me adjust the size. Okay, I adjusted the size. Let me also adjust my Visual Studio Code environment and keep it side by side so that it will be easy for you to follow. Great. Now you can see this is my application, right? And this is my output in the browser. My server is running. We're all set now to create the real application. So let's go ahead and start creating the real application. So you can close all the windows. You can just click this X mark. It will close the window, or you can go to the open editors here and just click this button. It will close all the windows. Okay, let me also clear the terminal from here. Let me also remove this thing for now. So I have a plain Visual Studio Code environment, but let's open the File Explorer because we are going to create some components here. And not only that, here there is one icon for collapsing the folders in Explorer. Let me collapse it so that it will be clean and neat, and you can easily navigate and create your component. That's it. So let's go ahead and go to our next step and see what we are going to do now. So till now, what we have done, we have just created a Lightning Web Components application, okay, using the create LWC app command. And then we started the application and just viewed the application by going to this URL, localhost :3001. Okay, if it doesn't work, you can also try 0.0.0.0.0:3001. Great. So yeah, you can just, the command is not, so someone says like, no, npm install create LWC app doesn't work. So the command is not npm install create LWC work. Here we are using a tool called npx. So the command is npx create LWC app. Okay, just copy paste the command from the document there, and you should be able to create your application. Okay, so let's create the game component now. We have created our application. So let's create a game component. It's pretty simple. What we are going to do is, in the existing my folder, I can, if I want, I can give a new namespace, but I don't want to do that. I will use the my namespace there. Within the my folder, let us create a folder name called game. You can just copy this folder name. Let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. And here in source, in modules, you can see the my there. Just select that my, and then you can either right click and create file, or simply click on this folder. So here you have a icon for creating a quick icon, quick action icon with which you can create the folder. So let me click this icon and it creates a folder. Let me paste that name as game, and my folder is ready. Okay, now I have the folder. So to create the component, I can create a JavaScript file. I can create a HTML file. Okay, so you can also create just JavaScript file. If you don't want to show any user interface, if your component serves the purpose of only business logic to help some other component to be imported in some other component, you can only create JavaScript. So that is the benefit of ECMA 6+ standards, where you can create a JavaScript file and easily share that file with other components. Okay, let's go ahead and let us create a new file called game.html in that folder. Let us copy it once again and select this game folder and click on this create file icon. When you do that, it creates a HTML file for you. So you have the HTML file there. So let's write some code in the HTML file. So let's write some bare minimum code. So copy this code from here. I'll explain what does that code does. As I said earlier, all the components will have the template tag, and whatever you want to write within the template tag, you can write whatever HTML you want to write. Here I just created two sections. One div for the header information, where I want to show the header, some score or whatever player information, whatever you want to show in the header, you can do that there. And I have a game container information. This is where I can put my component, my container component, where the game keeps running. So I'm just creating a basic structure. Okay, I have created a basic HTML file. Okay, what next? So next we'll create a CSS file. So let's create some styling there, so that for header, we'll give some styling. For container, we'll give some styling. So I already created some CSS file for you. So which has 3 classes. So what we'll do is here is, let's first copy this game.css here. Just copy game.css. Go to your game folder once again. And within the game folder, you create a game.css file. Now you can see that in game folder, you have game.html file and game.css file. Okay. Once game.css file is created, just copy this CSS code from here and paste it here. Okay. So header, I want to give in some kind of color here because it will be a bit of bright color, even for accessibility in the accessibility perspective. So I also have a game container. So I've given some width and height and like, what should be the background and stuff. Down the line, we'll create a game block. For now, we are not creating that, but don't worry. So let us save it. So for now, these 2 classes we are using here, one header, the other one is game container. Great. Yes, very good question. I have one question which is very important. Sorry for not telling it before. Someone asked a question, Vikrant Chaudhary, for raising that. Thank you. Do we need to have same name, HTML, CSS, JavaScript as folder name? Exactly. You need to have the same name. That is the binding factor. So the engine, LWC engine, knows that all these 3 things are bundled together as a component. So it refers to the files. So it knows that these are bundled together, these are binded together. Whenever a CSS style is required, it is going to check that particular file to get all that CSS information. Very good question. So I'm using the same name. You can notice that I'm using game.css, game.html. And one more important point here, when you're giving the name for your folder, and of course these files as well, the name will be in camel case. Say if it is a 2-word name, let us say instead of game, if I would have said snake game. So snake will be in small letters, and for the game, it will be G capital, right? So it will be SNAKE small, then capital G, AME in small. So it should be a camel case. So these are the naming conventions for the Lightning Web Component. Okay, let's go back. And now let's implement the game.js. So what we'll do is we'll implement the business logic. We'll create a file called JavaScript file. Again, the same name. Go to the game folder once again and create a file. And let's call it as game.js. And we'll write a bare minimum code. Let me copy this code from here and paste it here. So what does this code do? So say, as I said, Lightning Web Components is based on ECMA 6+ standards. So whatever standards have evolved beyond ECMA standard script, ECMA script standard 6, we are adopting those standards. Okay. And here we can use the import statement to import any JavaScript file or JavaScript library from the external sources. In this case, I want to import a class name called Lightning Element from our JavaScript framework, LWC framework. So once we have this framework, right? Once we have this class, we can start using the class. And here I just simply created a class name called game, which extends the Lightning Element. So I'll get all the LWC features for this class game. And not only that, I want to use this in some other place. So I'm just exporting it. And I'm also making this class as the default class so that you can, like, when you import it, you can directly use the game name game there, and you can get that class and you can start using those methods, class and methods. Fine. This is a bare minimum class. Let's save it. We have created our very first component called game component. So what shall we do next? We'll add this game component to our application. Okay. So as I said, when you created your project structure, it has created an app for you, and it has created a greeting component. For now, I don't want any greeting component. I can even delete this component because I'm not going to use it. It's only a sample component. But I'll use the app component where I'm going to place my game component. So let's go ahead and see what the next step says. Next step says that you add the game component to the app. So to do that, you just open the app.html under my app. So as I said, we are going to use this component as a custom element in the app. So let us open app.html. Let me go to the Explorer app and let's open app.html. And there's so much stuff in app.html. All this stuff is created just to create this basic application, give some basic information for you, but no worries. Let us remove everything within this and keep it simple. This is a basic template tag, nothing else. And here we are going to use our custom element that we have just created. So how are we going to use it? So we can use my, which is the namespace minus game. This is the component, that's it. And we can save. Okay, when you do that, see, because my local development server is running, it is dynamically created there. Okay, if you did not type here, still no worries, you can go back to your document and you can just copy this code and replace the complete code in your app.html. I just copied once again to show you how you can work with the workshop guide. I just pasted it. It's the same thing, and let me save it. Okay, now we have created our very first component, Lightning Web component, and then we also started using that component in the application. Any questions so far? You can just type your questions in the chat window. So while I'm talking, Aditya can also answer your questions. So everyone is with me. You have created your component and you're also able to see that in your browser. Yes or no? Great, Shreyas. Okay, so I've added few people now who joined, probably maybe if they have joined, they are able to join. So you can follow on. I'll not be able to repeat everything for you, but yeah, you can follow on. It will be easy to follow. Cool. Now that we have created the template, so you can save that file and see the output there anyways that we have already done. And then to keep the app also simple, if we open this app.css, let me show you how the app.css looks currently. Let me go here. So every time you need not really go here, open that source folder, modules folder, and then open your file. Rather, what you can do is you can open the command palette. You can go here, view, and select command palette. In Visual Studio Code, in the command palette, you can remove this greater than symbol here and type the file name. In our case, app. I just want to open app.css, so I can open it from here. Okay. You can also use the shortcut key to launch that command palette. You can use Control-Shift-P if you are using Windows, or Command-Shift-P if you are using Mac operating system. Okay. Now this app.css, if you see, it's a very long file. Let me remove everything. I don't want to use all these things. Let's keep it really simple. So what I'll do is I'll copy the CSS file because I only have the container and header in my app. So I'll just paste it here and let us save it. That's all. If I want to use the container. Okay. So here I can use the container header and then do this stuff. So far, so good. You can, anyway, I'm not adding those classes for now. I'm not adding the class here. If you want, you can make it as a container class and then see the styling. Okay, so let's go ahead. And you can also verify that the output currently looks like this. It's exactly looking like that for me. Now let's go and create the game area. Okay, so we'll create the game area. We'll see what are the different things that we'll have to do there. Okay, let me explain it with a presentation and then we'll come back to this document here to learn more about it. So let's go ahead. So now we are going to create the game area. So how does the game area look like? You see, this is how you can look at your screen. Okay, whether it's your mobile screen or is your desktop screen. You can consider the top left corner of your desktop as an origin, and this is your x-axis, and this is your y-axis. So I can say this is the positive x-axis, which goes to right, and this is the positive y-axis. Okay, and our component can be placed in your screen somewhere. So for instance, here I place the component. Okay, here I'm placing the component. Now, I think we have some questions here. We have defined stylings for container in CSS, but did we refer container anywhere in the HTML code? Yeah, for app.css, I just showed you, like, no, you can make the thing simple. If you want, you can use for the my game, you can use that class as the container class, and then you can adopt the styling. For now, leave it. So let's worry about the styling for our component itself. So because we are working on the component, we'll worry about the styling of our component, so not to get confused. So we'll use game.css for styling our component, and then later, some point of time, you can improvise your application. So there'll be a lot of scope for that. Okay, coming back to the presentation. So as I said, this is our screen. Within the screen, I have placed my component here, and this component will have a width and a height. If you see your game, so if you go back, if you see the game here, so I want to put some width and height for the game. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So it has width and height, within which I'll divide this component into smaller parts. Let's call them as, say, cells or blocks. Okay, I want to divide it into some smaller blocks so that I can hold a part of the game there, maybe a snake body, maybe some food there, or I want to keep it empty. Okay, so I can divide it into a small block. You can in fact define the size of the block, maybe 20 by 20 pixels or whatever. Just define the size of your block, and then you can divide the whole area of your component into a number of blocks. Now you can imagine your component itself as a matrix of blocks, and you should be able to identify each of these components. So now what I'll do is I'll give some indexing. We know that positive x. So when you see here at the top, this is positive x, which increases from 0 to 8. And on the left, this is the positive y-axis, which increases from 0 to 7, right? So now what we'll do is we'll try to create an ID for each of these components. Maybe first component, first block can be 0, 0. Second block can be 1, 0. Third block can be 2, 0. And you can see that x is incrementing and y is constant because I'm putting it in the same y row. So on and so forth. Similarly, we can also give indexing for in the y direction as well. So it will be 0, 1, 0, 2, so on and so forth. Likewise, you can give indexing for all the blocks. And now you can uniquely identify each of these blocks. Maybe you can create a very big array of these blocks, and then you can work with those blocks. Okay, now let's see how we can implement this logic programmatically. And at the same time, let me also tell you that we have created a game element, right? Game custom element now. So this blue compartment which you're seeing here is your game element. Within the game element, you want to put all these blocks. Maybe we can use a div for doing that. So within the game, we can create different sections, different blocks using the div element of HTML. So let's see that. Let's go back to the document. Okay, so here, these are our current problems. How do you calculate the height and width of the game area grid? Now we know that game area needs height and width. So what we can do is, we know that our game element itself is a HTML element. So we can use the HTML element methods there. So you can get client width and client height dynamically. Maybe you want to put this component in your browser, you want to use it in the browser, or maybe you want to use it on the mobile device, or maybe you want to use it on tablet or iPad. So we want to calculate the height and width dynamically. So for that, we can use the HTML element and then define a cell size so that you know how many cells are filling the complete game block. So maybe you want to say 2020, we'll have to divide the entire area into that cell size, which you saw in the slide there. And finally, we'll have to create the blocks. As I said, we can use div element for each of those blocks. But how do you create the block? The general style of creating the div elements is using the JavaScript. Okay, you can use the JavaScript and you can write logic to dynamically create the div elements and keep appending those elements to your actual element. Okay, but here we are not going to do that. We are going to use the LWC features where we have something called as directives, where we have looping or iterative constructs with which you can iterate over your HTML elements and keep adding those elements. We'll see that with code in action. So now we have the problems. We know how to solve it. Let's solve it. Let's start creating those things. But before that, let me also tell you that when you create a component, the component has a life cycle. It is created through various steps, which are abstract, which probably you don't know how it is created. Ultimately, when it is rendered, we see the output. That's what we are seeing. In our case, it has created something and we are seeing the output there. That's it. But, sorry. If you click this rendered callback, I just put a link there, which takes you to a document. Let me open it in a bigger browser window. 1 second. Okay. So yeah, when you click this and open it in a browser window, let me zoom it here. Okay. So this is a link to the LWC developer guide, which is a very useful resource for you. So because I already read this guide maybe a few times now. So I'm directly referring the guide and using it. But yeah, if you are just getting started with Lightning Web Components, it starts with all the fundamentals. It gives the installation instructions, which I put in the guide, today's guide, workshop guide. So how, you'll start building the Lightning Web Components right from basics. Okay, but my intention here is to show you how the component is created and what happens during the process of, when you create the component and when you open it in the HTML, when you open it in the browser, how that element is rendered, what happens, right? So this is the complete life cycle where it is going to call the constructor. It is going to populate all the public properties of that particular class, that HTML element, so on and so forth. So it goes through different phases. And just before rendering the component, it is going to call a method called rendered callback. Now, when you are creating the component, you want to take the control, you want to do some steps before showing the component in the browser. Okay, so what you can do is you can use these methods. These are called as the lifecycle hooks. So you can use these methods and you can write your code there so that when it is rendering, before rendering, if you want to do some action, it does that action and then it will be rendered in your component. So we are going to use this render callback method in our component. So if you go back, I can minimize this and show the component here anyway. If you go back, so what we are going to do here is we are going to use the render callback method and we are going to do some action here. So before the user sees our HTML element, I want to create the complete structure like this. There should be something there which user sees in the user interface and start working on that, right? So what we'll do here is we'll just copy this code, the entire code. Just copy the code, go back to your Visual Studio Code environment, go to the game.js, and now we'll replace this code because it's a basic class. Let's replace it and write this code here. And let us save it. Let's see what we are doing here in this code. So I will define some properties here. No worries, we are going to use these properties. So most of the developers practice is they start writing the code and whenever a property is required, they start defining the properties there. Or the other way around, you can define the properties and start writing the code. It's your choice again. So here what we are doing is we are finding the width. As I said, I'm going to use the client width of the HTML element. So here what I'm doing is I'm calling this dot template dot query selector. Normally you can use HTML element dot query selector, some element dot query selector. This is what you do, right? But when you are creating the Lightning Web Components, what Lightning Web Components does is it keeps each of the component independent. So each component has its own styling. So maybe you are using the component at different contexts. The styling doesn't change. It keeps the styling with itself. Okay. To do that, we use a concept called as shadow DOM, right? So if you see here, let me open the.
Yeah, by the way, everything that we are talking about, if some of you are familiar with the terminology, that is well and good. If not, the terminology we use is nothing specific to Lightning Web Components. It is nothing that Salesforce has invented. All of these are web standards. So Shadow Root, Custom Element, Web Components, all of these are web standards. Our framework, like we initially mentioned, only does polyfilling and add some security layers on top of it. And it makes it easier for you to create web components, basically. I mean, if you were to create the same snake game using traditional web components, there is a little bit of more code that you'll have to write. You will have to set up the shadow DOM on your own and stuff, but the framework actually makes it easier for you. So just don't worry. Even rendered callback, the lifecycle hooks that we showed you, all of those are also web standards. So you can just Google for rendered callback, and actually the link that you get is going to be from the Mozilla website. It's not even going to be our own Salesforce websites and stuff. So it's all pretty much web standard. So don't read too much into this by thinking, okay, I have to learn so much. It's all web's rendered callback.
So most of the terminology, as Aditya was telling, like no,
or connected callback for that matter.
yeah.
So anything basically,
yeah.
because Satya is a Salesforce developer, Google.
Yeah, and my search engine is optimized because I keep searching only those things most of the time.
The second link is Mozilla link.
Yeah. So if you see here, it's the same thing. So it's the web components. As I said, Lightning Web Components are built on web components. I was showing in the slide a circle, a blue color circle called web components. So we are using the same thing. So whenever you have a question, probably when you search for that, you'll find that whether it's all about lifecycle hooks or any of the concept for that matter, you'll find the documentation right in your Mozilla site. Okay, so nothing specific to Salesforce, as Aditya rightly said now, except for a few things, a very thin wrapper. Wherever we use the Salesforce or Lightning Web Component Framework related things, I'll definitely talk about it in little more deeper perspective. Yeah. But if you come back here, when you so here I'm writing some code there, and we have created a game.html, game.javascript, game.css. And when you render, and if you examine that from your developer tools, you can see that we have a HTML head, body, and within that you have your component called MyApp component, right? So you have a MyApp component. Within that you have something called as shadow root. If you don't understand the concept, as Aditya said, no worries. So what it does is basically it creates a fictitious boundary for you, so that whatever styling you apply, whatever logic you apply, that will be there within, like, no, within this particular boundary. It will be applied within this particular boundary. So so how does it help? So for instance, you have styled your component in say blue color and took that component, put it in some other HTML, that blue color styling will be applied to your component. Okay, so that's how it's more independent. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm using rendered callback here because before the component is rendered, I want to show some width and height. I want to calculate width and height. And again, why I'm talking about all of these things is because there's a subtle difference on how you call the query selector. Normally, if you're writing the JavaScript code, you use the element name dot query selector, and then you use the query selector to get some elements from your HTML there, right? So whenever you're working on the web components, right, for that matter, any web components. So what you're going to do is you're going to get this dot template, because as I said, it's an independent component. So when you say this dot template, it is in fact referring to your template. It's going to get this template there. And within the template, it is going to run your query selector to get your component there. Okay, so now what it's doing is it is running that query selector on your current component, and it is getting the client width. Similarly, it is getting the client height. Now you have the width and height with you. Now what's the next thing you want to do? You want to find the extents, right? You want to find these extents. How extent is your X max in this case, and Y max in this case. You want to find those things. So here we are finding the X max, where we are using the mathematics, math method. So here we are dividing the total width by the block size. And for that reason, I've defined block size here as 20. It is going to give the number of number for me, the X max number. Similarly, I'll get the Y max number. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to run through these Y and X. Like if you see again here, I'm going to run 0, 0, 1, 0, so on and so forth for all the rows. And I'm going to create a div for each of those things. Okay, I want to create a block. And here I just want to give an identifier. There's one more reason why I want to give identifier, which we'll talk about it a little later. But while I'm running through this, I'm creating an object here. And I'm creating an array out of it. So here I created a temp blocks, and I'm just pushing it here into the temp blocks. Okay, and then finally I'm assigning the temp blocks to the game blocks. Okay, I could have in fact directly done that with the game blocks here. Okay, and then use that game blocks in my HTML. I've used temp blocks here because what happens is whatever property you define within your element, this property is called as a reactive property. I'll tell you what is a reactive property. You can use this property in your HTML. Okay, whenever the property value changes in your JavaScript, your HTML will automatically get rendered. Okay, and your component will be rendered. So what happens in this case, if you have like 1,000 by 1,000 cells, so it is going to render 1,000 into 1,000 times, which I don't want to do, which is definitely going to get into a kind of infinite loop. So what I'm doing is I'm just collecting all the information into an array there, and finally I'm assigning it to the game blocks. So this game blocks will be changed and the component will be rendered. Okay, and I'm also mentioning the information, and I'm also setting a flag here, render complete to true, so that I'm going to run the render callback if it is not complete. Fine. More about it a little later, but let's see how we are going to use these game blocks now. We have created a very big array of game blocks, and we'll see how we can use the game blocks in our HTML file. To do that, again, let's go back to our document. Here, we are going to use the for each loop, right? So we are going to get the game blocks. So this is the syntax. We'll copy paste the code, and then we'll understand the syntax in a much better way. And then we are going to run for each of these blocks and do some kind of business logic here. Okay. So what we'll do is rather than copying this part of code and then pasting it in your code, you do one thing. I've just put everything here in game.html, copy this code and replace the contents in your game.html. So for those who haven't followed yet, you just copy this code, and let me copy it here. Let me go back to the game.html, and I'll replace this complete code with that. Okay, let us save it. Okay, now if you see here, so I'm using a div for the header. I'm using the div for the container. Within this div, this looks like a new syntax for us. This is called as a directive, which is implemented by Lightning Web Components framework. As Aditya said earlier, most of the things are standard web components. So all the concepts we are using are the standard web components concept, except for very few things that we have created. So one such thing is this directive. We have created a directive for iteration for each loop, and we have also created a directive for your iterator, and we have created a directive for conditionals. That's it. These are the three different directives that we have created. So now here we are using the for each directive, which takes your game blocks parameter. So this game blocks is defined as a property in your class here, game class. And also notice that name of the class, this is in capital letters. So as I said, when you're creating the folder, Lighting Web Component folder, it has to be camel case. Okay. And when you're creating the class, it has to start with the capital letter. And this is the basic principle of any object-oriented programming. The class names, like at least a de facto principle, class name starts with a capital letter. Okay. Now here we have used the GameBlocks property, right? So this property we are referring here in our HTML using a curly brace. So whenever you use a curly brace, it is going to get that property value from your JavaScript file and it will render. Now you have this complete property value. From this, you are going to get each property, define a variable name here called block. Okay, and then each block is going to have one of the array element. So this game blocks, if you see, it's an array which is holding all these elements information. So for each of those array elements, I am creating a div class. That's it. I'm creating so many divs for that. So I'm going to create all these divs there. Okay, so if you go back, so for that divs, I'm giving game block as my styling class, which we already created. So this is the class that we have created at the beginning when we copy pasted. And then we are using the block.id. So we got each block information. And from that block, I'm getting an ID. If you see, go back to your game.js file. Here, what you're doing is we are creating a ID object with that y:x value. And I'm getting that information here. Okay, I'm just printing that information so that it will be easy for you. So if you say 0001, so on and so forth, that is the exact information. Okay, but this is not the intended output. Here, if you see, everything is linear. That is probably a styling information problem. So we can fix it. I can go to game.css and I can fix that styling information here. For you to make the thing simple, what I've done is I've created that styling information. The only change we need to do is, in fact, copy. This is the only change with respect to that file, but you can in fact copy the complete file and paste it here, there. You can just copy the whole file and paste it here. I just copied that styling information for now, and let us save it.
So
but yeah,
is your doubt clarified? So whatever property holds the game block information in JS, it's associated to the HTML using the binding syntax, that is the curly braces.
Right. So that's the reason we are using the same name, and that is the binding syntax. So we are binding this game blocks property to what is defined in your JavaScript file. And now you can see here the output. It is 00, 01, 02, 03, so on and so forth. These are all our elements. Okay, we have created the game block structure, this structure at least. And the next step is going to be creation of the snake and foot. We'll have to create a snake and foot. And yeah, Aditya, can you help us with that documentation so that it will be easy for people to follow and copy and paste? Well, Aditya does that stuff. Any questions here, I'll be happy to answer. Cool. So yeah, I think the things are ready. So what we are going to do now is we need to create a snake and foot. Okay, some color for the snake and like which will keep moving, and also foot. So for that, what we'll do is we'll create a styling class. Okay, to give some color for snake and foot. So just copy this and add this to your existing styling of your game. Just copy, Control C, and let's go to game.css.
So at its very core, I think by now you would have understood. In the beginning, we mentioned that we were not going to manipulate the DOM using JavaScript. So what we have done here is we created an object, I mean a list of objects, and we are iterating over those list of objects, and which is how we rendered all of these elements. And to create the illusion of how a block, so each block can at any point be just a block, or it can be a snake, or it can be the food. So our core business logic is that whatever object that you created inside the game block, it has properties that denote if a given object is, if a given cell is a snake, is it a food or something like that. So from now on, what we are going to be doing is we are only going to be working with the game block object. So that is the core logic. And since anyways, the HTML is doing all of the work of rendering the game blocks all the time, you will see that the moment we change something in the object, it will automatically be reflected in the UI. So Subbarao, you again asked, the association is not clear. We are directly referring to game blocks and not game object. So how does the UI know to go to the game blocks from the game object? So like we mentioned, when you define a web component, you are creating a folder structure and you're giving the same name to the HTML, JS, and CSS file. So the framework implicitly binds all of them together. So in the HTML, in game.html, if you use a property or a function, it's actually going to go to game.js and look for that property or that function. So that implicit binding happens and the framework takes care of doing all of that. So which is why we mentioned our framework is very thin, and even though we built it on top of web standards to address problems like this on how you bind something to the HTML and JavaScript, and how are you making sure that the moment something changes in JavaScript, the UI is automatically updated. So those kind of tiny little things that make your job easier is what the framework is going to do. So just know that whenever you define a web component, give the same name in all the three, and you don't have to worry about binding. It automatically knows where to fetch what details from, and it can fetch properties and functions. So that is that.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Aditya, for answering that question. And yeah, there's one more question. Says, is there any online tutorial available for LWC? Yes, so you can. Yeah, Aditya already pasted there. Maybe it's LWC Dev. He has sent it. Yeah, he sent it to everyone now. So lwc.dev. But we'll talk about the resources that you can use. In fact, I'm going to add those resources also to this guide for you to easily start working on LWC or start learning LWC. So that will be a kind of call to action once we are done with the workshop, but no worries. Okay, so let's get back. So we have just created a background color green and background color red here. And as Aditya said, we are going to work on each of these blocks. So any development, any program you write, or whether it's the data structures or your basic business logic programs, any kind of business logic. So it's always a good idea to divide and rule. I can say a divide and rule, where you work on a small part of the project. So in this case, what you're going to do is at any point of time, at any particular block, you're going to decide whether that block is going to hold a snake information, or it's going to have a foot there, or it will be empty. These are the only three possibilities. So we are going to play with that in our code now. So we'll do that as we progress. So for now, we just added some CSS styling. So now what we'll do is, we are going to, so as I said, so this can be a food, any of these blocks can be food and all. So if I go back to my presentation, yeah. So here you can see, like, this block is green in color. Assume this is a snake, and this block is empty. All other blocks are empty. One of the block may have, say, foot. So we'll have to handle that. For that, let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and copy paste, replace this code. Let's replace this rendered callback method. Okay. Let us replace this method completely, and I'll explain exactly what it does. So I'll replace this rendered callback method with our new code. So new code only has small differences, subtle differences. I'll show you what we have added in the new code there. Just paste it there. So this is the same thing. I did not change anything here till the temp blocks. The only change I made is within this object, instead of just populating the ID, now I've added additional properties. I've added a property called snake, I've added a property called food. Either snake can be true. If the snake is true, then food should be false. And of course, empty space is also false. It's not an empty space. It's filled with snake. When food is true, snake is false. And obviously, empty space is also false. So you need not really worry about the empty space. Always see whether it is snake is true or food is true at any given block. So we are going to see that. And also we are going to apply the respective styling. If it is snake, it has to be styled with snake. If it is food, it has to be styled with food. If it is empty, it has to be styled with empty. Okay. So for just testing purpose or the initial phase, what I want to do is I want to set that X0 location, Y0 location, which is like very first location in my block. I want to set it as the snake, and all other blocks, I want to keep it empty. So that's what I'm trying to do in this logic. Okay. Now we'll also change the HTML accordingly to take this information and render it in our game board here. So to do that, let's go back to our document and let us copy this HTML code from here. And again, I'm not making too many changes there. I'm just going to make a very small change. That change is in fact all about this class name. That's all. Okay. Let me replace this with that code. Okay. Let us save it. Okay. The only change now I made is, and so earlier I used block.id for key and now I'm using class name equal to block.class. Okay. This is the only change. But yeah, one important point to note here is, which I am not talked about, is key equal to block.id. So as I said, this is the only feature which we are currently using from the LWC framework, but otherwise all other things are standard. And in this directive, we implemented in such a way that we have optimized it as much as possible. So here we use a ID. Each component, each part of the component, okay, has to be uniquely identified. And maybe a custom element can have some other child custom elements. So each of them have to be uniquely identified. And we only want to render that particular component, that particular part only, rather than rendering the complete browser page. So that wise, that's how you'll have a better performance. Okay. So here, what we are doing is we are using a key and we are giving the block ID. So now we have created so many blocks here. The snake moved from here to here. Only these two blocks are going to change. All other blocks remains constant, right? It doesn't change. So we'll render only this part. That way the performance will be great. So that's why we use the key. That's the reason even in game.js, okay, let me save it. In game.js, we are creating the ID so that we uniquely identify each of the element and then put it there. Okay, cool. Now we have done that. Again, we have some problem here. It is linear because I removed this class name. Earlier, we have used the class from our game.css. We have used the game block class. Now we are not using that class. So what we can do is this div. How can we identify this div? This div is child of this game container. So we'll apply the styling. So for this class game container dot div, we apply some styling there, which helps. So let's go back and do that. What I'll do is this game block name, I'll change it to say game container. Okay, let me copy it and then replace this and space div. Okay, let me save it. Okay, now it is back. This styling is applied to this game.html. Okay, if you are not able to do that, no problem. So I have also put that styling here in the document. So again, you can replace the complete CSS file content with this. So you'll get it. So if you didn't know what to change, so the only change I made here is this one. But yeah, you can copy this complete code there and paste it. Okay, with that, yeah, now we have style, and you can also see a small green color box here. That's because in game.js at 0.0 index, I'm setting that particular block as a snake block. That's great. Now we have created our game area. We also started creating our snake. In fact, we have created a snake head-like thing there. Okay. Let's see how we can make this move. Let's make our component dynamic really working. To do that, let's go back to our documentation. So hopefully everyone is with me so far. Yes. If yes, you can just type yes, which will make me a little happy. Even if you're not doing hands-on with me, miss somewhere, don't worry, you can just copy paste and do that. But yeah, if you understand, you can say yes. Thank you. Thank you for taking effort and typing yes there. Great, great, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Now let's see how we can move the snake. What happens when we move the snake? So let's see the logic here. So this is the exact same, I can say, kind of screen print here. So we have here the snake object and then rest of the cells are empty. So here we have the snake object and rest of the cells are empty. Let's see what we'll have to implement. So when the snake moves, what happens? So it moves from that component to the next component, next block, that block to next block. So what happened here? The next block has turned into green color and this block has turned into empty, right? Empty class or empty color, plain color. Okay, this is one change you can see. And so this 1 0 has become green, which has become snake now, and 0 0 has become empty. We'll have to implement this logic. So to do that, let us copy the code from here. I'll copy the complete code, but don't worry, if it is too much of code, we are going to handle it, as I said, divide and conquer. We are going to handle only a piece of it. Okay, I'll just copy paste here to make things a little faster, but yeah, we'll handle it slowly, no worries. So here in this part, let's see this part of the logic. What we are doing is we'll have to identify this block. If you go back, so we have to identify this block so that we can make the changes. And then we'll also have to identify this block and make the changes. So you might say, let's say this is the current block and this is the new block. So new block has to become snake, current block has to become empty. So we are going to do that stuff here. So if you see here, I'm in current position index. I'm trying to get that information. So I'll get this dot head. So I've defined X head, Y head. Initially, X head is at 0 location. Y head is at this 0 location. So I define these properties. And then I'm using dynamic expressions so that it will be evaluated and I can get the 0.0 value. And I'm storing it in the ID. Okay. So I'm using the arrow syntax here. It's as good as I'm invoking a method and calculating some information. Exactly. I'm getting that ID and I'm returning that ID. Okay. That ID, I'm storing it in a variable called current position index. So that in that array, this complete array, I'm getting this array location. That is 0th location. Okay. And then for that location, I'm setting the snake value equal to false. So this has to become empty, right? So I'm setting it to false and I'm also setting the class as empty. I'm just setting this class as empty. For now, let me, setting this as empty. This is one thing we have done. After that, what we'll have to do? We'll have to advance the X head. X head is at currently 0, 0 location, which has to become 0, 1 location, right? So I want to make X head as 0. This has to become 1 and Y head has to become 0. So that I've defined using different properties here. I call it as X speed, Y speed. Why I named that property as speed? There's a reason. Maybe down the line you want to change the game. You want to increase the speed, decrease the speed. You want to jump 2 blocks at a time, whatever you want to do. So currently, I just want to go in X speed direction, increment by 1. So Y speed, increment by 0 only. So I'm just adding those values. I'm just changing those values. That's all. To keep the logic simple, let me comment this out. And what's the next thing we'll have to do? We'll have to identify the new position index, right? So new position index. So now because the X head and Y head changed, which is 0, 1, and we want to get that 0, 1 index here. So I'm getting that 0, 1. It's the same logic, just like above. I'm using the same logic what we have used here. I'm using the same logic here. I'm getting the new position index. I'm setting the snake value to true and the class value to snake. So now it becomes green. That's all. So I made those changes. Let us save it. Okay. So now that it is saved, let's go back and see what we'll have to do in the next step. Okay, this step is done. So let's go down and let's take the next step where we'll have to modify the rendered callback method to use the Xmax and Ymax properties. If you go and see your current method here, rendered callback, right? We have defined Xmax and Ymax here, right? So we have defined Xmax and Ymax here, but I want to use the global Xmax and Ymax because we have defined the property here. And I want to calculate, I want to update this value so that it will be applied to the complete game, right? So what I'll do here is, so instead of saying Xmax, Ymax, let us change it to say this dot Xmax. Okay, let's also remove this and let us call it as this dot Ymax. So it will refer to the current object, and this also will change it to this dot Ymax and this dot Xmax. Try to understand the concept. Don't worry if you don't try to really type along with me, because you can copy paste the code. I just made the code available for you. Okay, so let us save it. Okay, we have just saved the Xmax value and we have saved the Ymax value. My expectation here is it has to move from this location to the next location, and it has to do that. So for that, what we'll have to do is we'll have to call the move method. So I have created a start game method here in which I'm setting the move. I just don't want to move it to only one cell, but I want to keep it moving continuously until we change the direction. So I'm for every 300 milliseconds, I want to call this move method using the start game. Now the start game has to be called somewhere to initiate our game. So let's copy it and let's go back. And in the render callback, because when it is rendered for the very first time, let us call the start game. Okay, let us save it. Okay, it has to start. So it says start game is not defined. This is common mistake most of the developers do. And just like any other developer, I've done the same mistake. It's not just start game. I'll have to use this dot start game. So that is the method because it's a method of that class. Okay, I have done this dot start game and I expect this to move. It is still not moving. And then it shows some error message. We'll handle it later, but let's see why it is not moving. So here we are using the game block and doing stuff. And if you go back to the render task class, so here we are making some changes to the class every time, and then pushing into 10 blocks and assigning it to game blocks. Okay, there's one important point which you need to understand is, so whenever a property changes here, the property value will be reflected in the game.html. This automatically renders once again, and rendered callback will be called, and you can see the output there. Okay, exception is this works for all the primitive data types. If you are using string, if you are using integer or whatever, it works for all the primitive data types. When you are using the array, it works at the higher level. If the array itself changes completely, then it will be reflected. But if some element of the array within the array changes, or if you are using an object also, it applies to object as well. And array by the array itself is an object in JavaScript. So in object, if a property changes, that will not automatically render. So to do that, we can use one of the LWC directives here called attract. So this is one more thing which is different from general web components. So attract is a kind of what you call it? Yeah, we can use a track. A track is going to indicate that this particular property has to be specifically tracked and made reactive. Okay, so and to use this attract, we have to define the get the track from the Lightning Web Components. Someone's mute mic is, yeah, good. Sorry, good. Thank you for muting it. Let me mute it off. Now, yeah. Okay, so this is a decorator. A track is a decorator, which is defined in the Lightning Web Components framework. So we can import it, and then we can make these game blocks as a track. So anything changes internally also beyond the level 1. So if it is an object, if the property changes, then it is going to indicate to the HTML that it is changed, and it renders. Okay, so let us save it. And now you can see your component moves. Your object moves here. Okay, and then after some point of time, you can see an error. So why that? So let's see, to understand that, let's see here. So what happens when it moves? When it moves one step, this is the logic that we have just implemented. When it goes to the end, let us say it has moved through all these steps and went to 8.0. What happens when it moves? When it moves out of your game area, right? It goes to the next block, which is not available currently. So some of the implementers of Snake game can treat it as the completion of the game. If they want to have a strict boundary, the game can die there. It's like a wall. It hits the wall and it dies. But we want to keep the game, we want to make players more happy. We want to keep that snake moving. So what we want to do is, instead of just stopping there, we will reset it to the first element. Okay, if you can do that, then the snake keeps on moving. So that can be implemented with that logic which is already available here, which I just commented. So here what I'm doing is, when we get into the terminal condition, so I'm checking these conditions. So I'm checking if this dot x hat is greater than or equal to x max, that it is crossed. In that case, I'm resetting it to 0. Similarly, on all the 4 directions, we have 4 boundaries, right? So we are handling it for all the 4 boundaries, and we are doing that. Now, if you save it, hopefully it continues. Yes. So it is working as expected. Now your snake started moving. What next? Now you want to apply the directions. Now, if you go here and press like no directions, nothing happens here in my case. So what I want to do here is, I want to set some arrow keys for which I've already copy pasted the functions here. But how does this work? Let's understand with a presentation once again. So let us say, okay, let us say I'm at 3.3, 2 location. When I press the right arrow, it has to move like this, right? So again, the same logic which we have used earlier, we have to use some kind of similar logic that we are changing the direction, right arrow. So we'll have to listen to that event, arrow key event, and then handle it accordingly. So when you press right arrow, it has to move that direction. Similarly, left arrow, it has to move in that direction, and top and also bottom. Okay, so you are going to work on these 4 blocks only. So at a given point of time, you are only working on 2 blocks. So let's see that in action here. So here I have added the key controls where I am calling the window.add event listener on key down event. So here I'm checking if event is, if it is a arrow up, what has to happen. So if you go back here, sorry, yeah. It has to happen like this. So basically y has to decrement and x should remain constant. So that's what we are doing here. So in this case, y is decrementing and x is remaining constant. Okay, so similarly for arrow down, for arrow left, arrow right, we are doing the same things. So here we are using the switch case default, and then we are handling each of these events. Okay, so we'll have to add these key controls also method, we'll have to call this method so that this it starts listening to the events. That again, we can do it in our rendered callback. So for now, this is the best place where we can call all these methods. Again, let me not forget this dot. Okay, but later you can create your own start method, and then you can call that start method from your rendered callback. Let us save it. And let us go back to the game and see if my arrow key works. Yes, it works. I press down, I press right, I press left. I go down and see if it is crossing the boundaries. Yes, it is crossing. It is working as expected. Now we have created the snake. We have given it a movement. We also set the directions. Now the next thing we'll have to do is, because for the snake to live, we'll have to create the foot. So let's see how we can create the foot and start working with the foot. So let's go back. And we are almost getting to the final stages of the game. Let's see. But yeah, and yeah, so this is currently I'm seeing all these numbers, right? So in actual game, you don't see those numbers. So let's go ahead, go to game.html. Instead of displaying this block.id, we'll just display empty space, ampersand and b is in column. Okay, let us save it. Okay. Oh, so yeah, that is the mistake. If you forget something something not done properly, it is not ampersand. So I said ampersand and I typed @ so that's the problem. Okay, now that is gone. So you can either change it directly or just replace the code with this. So the only change here is this ampersand MBSP. Now we got rid of all those numbers there. What next? Next is we'll have to generate the foot. Okay, so this foot, as per our requirement, we should be able to generate the foot randomly. Okay, to do that, what we can do is we can copy this code from here and go here, and in game.js, just above the render callback or somewhere, wherever you like, just paste that method, generate foot. Okay, so we have created a method called generate foot. Let's see what we have done here. Again, what we have done is we are calling the math.random function, right? Which is going to return some what we call decimal value, which we multiply with the maximum area so that we get some integer value, and then we like a float value, and then we'll round it off to some floor or seal value, whatever. So let's round it to floor value so that you get some kind of exact location. Okay, some integer location. So you're getting the x coordinate here and y coordinate here, and at that location you want to place your foot. So to do that, so what we are using the same logic which we have used in our render callback. We are trying to find the index of that x foot and y foot location, and then we call it as foot position index, and then we'll set that foot value to true, and we'll also set the class to foot. So now what we have done, we have identified one particular block and then setting that block as foot block. That's all. Now from where do we call this to make it working? So Aditya, you can just get us the more documentation so that we can almost complete the game. But yeah, from where to call the foot, again, let Aditya paste the code there. We can take the code from here, or I can call it directly. Aditya, is there? Okay, let me, so that, okay, we have created generate foot. So we can generate the foot wherever we want, maybe here. Just let's try it and see if that works. We can call it here. Okay, see, it works. It keeps on generating. We don't want to do that. We want to generate the foot only on a given condition. So we'll put a condition here and generate the foot. But yeah, one thing is clear, that it can generate the foot. Let us save it. Okay, So yeah, Aditya, you there? Okay, let
Yeah,
me
give
let me.
me 1 second. I'm actually okay. You can put it in under this dot add keyboard controls.
Okay,
Okay, render callback. Then you'll do.
okay, let me do that. So okay, let me get that for you. Okay, so here, so yeah, it was generating a lot of word. Let me do this here. So what I'll do is, um, right. So yeah, even before doing that, let me explain the concept and let me go there. So let's see what happens when
Yeah,
we
I
get the
added.
food. No worries.
So
Yeah,
basically, what you'll have to do is, since you are going to generate food whenever the initial thing gets rendered, you'll have to just add it to the rendered callback, and that you will do right under this dot add keyboard controls. That's it.
yeah. So yeah. So let me do that here. So you can render it from here for the very first time. But yeah, let's go ahead. Let's first understand the concept. Okay, so here you can see on the screen there's a snake. What happens when it encounters a food? Okay, so we can randomly generate the food that we saw. It can put the food anywhere randomly. So what happens when a snake goes there? So here what I've done is, till now we are using only one block, right? So I'm dividing the snake into two parts. This is the head of the snake, and rest of the part I'll call it as the tail of the snake. Okay, so so what should happen here is when the snake moves, head moves onto the food, snake should eat this food. Okay, and it should grow its size, and the food has to be randomly generated somewhere else so that we can use the direction keys and go there and eat the food. So let's go ahead and let's eat the food there. So it is randomly generated. Now you can see that the snake size is 4. In fact, the tail has increased and head has moved to the new direction. So we'll have to implement all this logic. So for that, what we'll do is, so I have created a logic. We'll get that code there for you.
I put the code in the document. It is all live
Uh,
now.
cool, cool. Thank you for that. So
Yeah,
let's go
just add
ahead.
the this dot generate food right under this dot add keyboard controls in rendered
Yeah,
call.
let me show you the food generation once. Okay, so here you can use this dot generate food. So yeah, whenever it is rendered, it will generate the food here. Okay, so basically, to see here, the food is generated. I can use the direction keys here and go and take the food. Okay, it has eaten away the food and nothing happens. There's no new food. So now the food has to be randomly generated. So what are the different things that has to happen here? One is the food has to be generated. The score is to be increased. If you go back here, so when it eats, the snake length should increase, food has to be generated, and score is to be increased. Let's see how we can do that logic. Okay, so I can take the code from here and yeah, it's the same code I put here already. Okay, let us put the code here. So what it does is whenever the game block's new position index has food. Whenever it sees the food, what should happen? This code has to be incremented, and it has to new position. In the new position, the food has to become false. So because currently the food is there, the food has to become false, and we'll have to generate a new food from there. So for the very first time, you are generating the food from your rendered callback. So to start with, it generates the food. After that, every time the snake eats food, right? This is simple logic. The snake eats food, you increase the score and generate the new food there. So let's see, let's save it and see if it works. So now I got some food. Okay. The score is not increased. Yeah, that's for one reason, because I have not defined score. If you see in HTML, I always set the score to 0. So what we'll do is we'll go to game.js and we'll define a property called score, and we'll initialize it to 0. Okay, and then we'll use that property here. So how do we access that property? We'll use the curly braces, and yeah, that's it. Let us save it. Okay, now the score is, we are referring to the score, and we know that in game.js, in the move, whenever we see the food, we are incrementing the score. Let's see if it works very quickly. Okay, you can see the score increasing there. The score is increasing, but yeah, the snake is not growing. So that's the next thing we'll have to handle. Okay, so how to do that? So let's copy the code from here. So again, all those steps are given in this documentation. I said here, create a score property in the game class and initialize it to 0 and stuff, which I've already done. So it is available in the documentation. You can just follow the documentation to create the score there. Okay. So yeah, to save time, I'm just using it straight away. So let's go ahead and copy this and replace our move code. So let us replace the complete code. There are only, again, as I said, there are only small differences that I've made. Rest of the code is same. Let me explain it, what I've done here. So if you see, this looks little new, no worries, but this code is same, which we already know. And we also know this part. Okay. So what's new here is the food logic, which I just implemented. I replaced it with a new condition, because there can be two possibilities. Either the snakes eat food and moves, or the snake doesn't eat food, but still keep moving. Let's go back to the presentation once and see. This is the food case we saw, right? Let me go back and again run it. So when the snake eats food, new food is generated, snake length grows. But if the snake doesn't eat food, if it is in this condition, what happens? The snake simply moves and there is no food. You only need to move the snake. So both have two different logics. So let's implement that logic here. So in this case, if it is the new position index has food, in that case, we are incrementing the score, and then we are using this dot tail. So what is this dot tail? As I said, we are creating the snake as a head here and a body. So let's create a tail here. So initially we'll set the tail property. Again, I've given it in the documentation. So we can say tail equal to empty array. Just create the stuff. So it's a tail equal to empty array, so that we can refer to that tail there. Initially, which will be empty. And every time when the snake eats food, you can see here, if the new position is food, what it does is this tail dot unshift. So unshift, so basically array has 4 different operations. You can use shift, unshift, and push and pop. So if you want to add at the beginning of the array, then you can use push, or remove an element from the beginning of the array, you can use pop. Similarly, if you want to do the same thing at the end, you can use unshift to insert an element or shift to remove an element. So here what I'm doing is, so I'm unshifting the current head, moving it, and in the new position, I'm setting the foot value as false because it has eaten away the foot, right? And then I'm generating the new foot there. Similarly, when the snake doesn't eat food, okay, so what should happen? So when the snake doesn't eat food, you only need to pop. You need to remove it, nothing to push. Okay, remove the last element and change the current position index and just keep moving, and change the snake to false. So this condition, let's see this condition. So if you see here, go back. So what's happening? So when you move here, the head is moved. So your tail has advanced one step and the last element of the tail is removed. Okay, so that is pop. So that's what you're doing here. You're removing the last element and then you're moving the snake. So you're unshifting it so that it is getting one element at the front, that is the head element. You're getting it at the front, and from the tail, you are removing one element there, one block there. So that's how you are simulating the movement of the snake. This logic might look little complex, but yeah, as you start working on it, it will be more and more easy. Okay, let us save it so far. And we are left with one more last logic that we'll see little later and see if it works now. So now the snake is moving, we have a foot, and let's eat that foot there. The snake has grown and we got a new score. And what's happening? It hasn't generated a new foot. Okay, or it is generated, I'm not seeing it. Yeah, because it is covered somewhere. So yeah, it has generated new foot. So we can fix this CSS styling by changing your app.js, but it is going app.css. Yeah, it is eating food and it is growing. Okay, and when it is not eating food, still it is moving. So both the logics are working now, right? So what is left out is how do we end the game? Okay, for that, let's go back. Let's go back and see what happens when a snake eats itself. Okay, here currently in 3.3, you can see the head of the snake and this is the body of the snake. So when the snake eats itself, goes here, okay, it has to die. So what happened here? The head of the snake, if you go back, this is the head of the snake and this is the tail. So head is at 3, 3. Tail has all 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, and 1, 4 elements, right? When you moved, the head moved into the tail. So head is now part of the tail array. So if you get this condition, then the snake is eating itself and the game has to be closed. Okay, so let's implement that here. So that we have implemented in this part of the logic. So here we are checking if this tail dot includes the head. So if that is including that head, what should we do? We'll alert a message saying game over, and we'll reset the score to 0. We'll reset the tail to 0, and we will also reset the head and y head elements to 0. So we'll completely reset the game there. Okay, so let me refresh this once. Okay, that's only a refresh problem. Now let's go ahead and let's play freshly. I've eaten the snake. I've eaten the food. In fact, not me. Snake has eaten food. I'm hungry though. So yeah, snake is eating food. It is growing. Happy path. I can go from this direction. I'll find the shortest path there to go there and eat the food. So currently I have kept it as 300 milliseconds, which really doesn't give a good gaming speed. I can increase the speed. I should have done it little early to save the time, but yeah, and let it eat itself. It hasn't eaten itself. Okay. Now I've eaten itself. I just press the right key. So it has eaten itself. Okay. That's done. There is some kind of refresh issue. No worries. But yeah, so you can render it. We can fix it little later if there is a refresh issue. But let me, yeah, we'll fix it little later. This is not the right time when you are so hungry. So yeah, this almost is the complete implementation of the game. Now let's go back and see what is left out. So how many of you are still with me doing this game? Are you able to do that? Great, great, Nitish. Suresh, Subbarao, excellent, excellent. Okay, so yeah. Yeah, Aditya is in fact dynamically creating the documentation here. At least the like what are the things that we can do later. So there are few corner scenarios which definitely cannot be done in 2 hours. That too when we are talking. Probably if you are sitting and implementing by yourself, I'm sure that you'll be able to implement the snake game within say half an hour max. Okay, so yeah, now that you have created the game, the next part is how we can deploy it and see it in action. You can share it with your friends, kids, or partners, whatever you want to do. This is a game that you have created by yourself. So to do that, we'll use the GitHub and we'll deploy it in the GitHub pages. So let's go ahead and we'll deploy. So to do that, we'll do some kind of what you call preparation for deploying it on the GitHub. So let's open this LWC services config.js file. Okay. So let me maximize this so that we'll have a better view. And I can use Command P or Control P there to open a particular file. I just copied the file name from there, the documentation, and I open this file. Okay, so basically when you want to deploy it in GitHub pages can take two kinds of folders, either the main folder or some kind of docs folder. The folder name has to be something like docs. So when you build your source code, so what happens in general is your built source code will get into the dist folder. So I have not built my final executable, but if I want to build this final executable, it is going to create a dist folder there, and it is going to put my executables there. So here, because GitHub wants docs, so I want to use the docs folder, so that I can define a property to set that as my distribution folder. Okay, so to do that, I think this link takes me to a location, to a file, yeah, to a GitHub repository where you can find all the properties that you can define in your modules.exports. But yeah, I want to set this build directory. Let me only copy this property here. And let us make this as docs. Again, we have documented everything in your folder here, how to do all that stuff. So you can find the information. Okay, so you can go here and replace the content to do that stuff, but let's understand and do it. Okay, I just created this one, and not only that, I also need to change it in the server.js file. If you open under scripts, you'll find server.js, because it is going to be deployed somewhere, maybe on Heroku, maybe on GitHub pages, wherever you want to set a port and your distribution directory from where it can get the executable files. This also I'll set it as docs. So I've done two things here. One thing is I've set the build directory which in fact you can copy it from here.
You also need to update the resources from disk to docs.
Yeah, I'll explain that as well. So here, and the second thing is you also, in fact, in the script.server.js, you have mentioned your disk directory docs. Okay. Not only that, here you can see that there is one more property, resources, right? So whatever resources you have in your source, right? So here we have not used any kind of resources, but whatever resources you have, these resources are to be copied into your docs directory. So let's make it as docs here. Okay, so let us save it so far. Okay, now that the preparation is done, we have prepared your source code to be published into the GitHub pages. Let's create a GitHub repository and commit it. So how do you create the GitHub repository? So let me close all other tabs from here. So you can open github.com, which will ask you to log into your GitHub account. So I've already logged into my GitHub account, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to log into your GitHub account. Once you are logged into your GitHub account, just let me know. Yes. So Aditya also shared a link where we have created the complete snake game, where people are also contributing to the snake game. So you can go and you can also check out the code from here if you want to see the complete source code. But yeah, for now you can just, because this is a game that you have built by yourself, you create your own repository and just push it there, and then you can use that repository as your reference to add more functionality to your existing code. Okay, Suresha has already logged into the GitHub account, and I believe most of the other people are also logging into the GitHub account. So I'll show you how to create a repository very quickly. So once you log in, you should be able to see new keyword here. If you are not able to see, you can go to your profile and also go to repository, your repositories, and then you should be able to see that button. Okay, let me click on new. Let us call the game as say snake game or simply snake game LWC, whatever. Give some name, and you can make a repository public, private, add some license files like open source license and stuff. You can do that, but let's keep it as now and click create repository.
Public, because GitHub pages can only
publish the public one. Correct. So let's keep it as default to avoid all such confusions and say publish. Now you have different ways to get this source code, find your source code on your local system with your GitHub repository. So we'll adopt this one where you have some commands. We can use these commands to make your GitHub source code, bring your source code into your GitHub repository. So let's do that. So you can see that these are all customized commands. You have just created your GitHub repository. I have a spelling mistake there. I have just put SNAK, no worries. Game LWC Git. So it is going to create this command for you. So you can just literally follow these commands. So let me copy this command from here. And let me go to my Visual Studio Code environment. Okay. And let us open the terminal.
One thing you should notice is whatever project structure gets created, we already follow all the best practices. So there is already a README file present in the project itself. So you can skip the part where it says echo a new file and create a README. The README should already be available in the project structure. So you just need to add all of your code, commit it, and push it. That's it.
Correct. So Aditya was saying README is already there. So GitHub, when you create that repository, right? So it in fact considers that you have not created any file so far. So it will let you create at least one file so that your GitHub repository is populated. Okay. So anyway, let's run this command first. Git init. And so if your snake is already running, you can cancel it. Or maybe if you're using your Visual Studio Code environment, you can click on this plus sign to launch a new terminal. And just paste that command here, git init. So make sure that you are in the correct directory, and then Git init. So you have entered, let me say ls. So I'm seeing the project files here. So I'm in the right directory. I just initted. And let me go back here to my GitHub commands. Again, I can say git add. As Aditya said, README is already there. I'll just copy the only to this part. I'll just copy git add command and I'll paste it here. What I'll do is I'll use dot here, which means it is going to commit all the files in this directory. So you just commit your current directory. Dot stands for current directory, right? So you want to commit all the files from the current directory. So let's say git add dot, which also includes our README file. Okay, so it has added that. And then let's make our git commit minus m first commit. Let's go here. First commit. So it has applied modifications and then it is failed because I have one of the hooks enabled for checking the syntax. If there are some subtle things, warnings in my JavaScript syntax, this ESLint is going to help. It's going to find those problems and you can go and fix those problems and again commit it. But I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. What I'll do is I'll use the command. Here I'll use -- no verify for now, which is definitely a bad practice. But just to save some time, I'm saying -- no verify. It is not going to check the ESLint there, and it is going to do the commit. So for all my repositories, generally I make sure that I run the ESLint and then only I commit it. And also I run the Prettier plugin, which is one more interesting plugin, which formats your code automatically before committing. Okay. Anyways, just copy this and press enter. Okay. Now this code is committed. Let's go back and copy the other commands. So let me create a branch called main branch. So I don't want this browser for now. I'll close it. So let us create the main branch. And what else? Now I need to remote set the origin. I'll need to add the origin. This is the thing which is pointing to my Snake game LWC repository. So this is a very important command. Copy this command and paste this command here. It is going to add your repository, bind your repository there. Now you just push your change. So you have pushed it to your origin because you already set the origin here. You pushed your code to the origin, whatever is there in your main branch. We'll copy this and we'll push it here. Okay, once it is done, it says it has successfully pushed. Okay, so all these things are in fact given in the steps here. So what we have done here is we have opened the GitHub account. We have followed the instructions in this or create this location, which is highlighted. And then we have used git add dot, okay, because README is already there. Then all other then we have verified and we have committed. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to create the GitHub pages. Okay, so I'm going to do all these steps now. Let's go ahead. So let us refresh and see if it is committed. Yes, I can see my commits here. It's already committed. So probably you also can see your commits there. Go to the settings tab and click the settings tab. Settings tab is where you can do all the settings related to this repository. Maybe you want to rename the repository or whatever you want to do. You want to add some comments, features, so on and so forth. Or even if you want to delete your repository, you can do that, which is definitely marked as the danger zone. Just below the, above the danger zone is where you can find the GitHub pages. So this is where you can configure your repository as the GitHub pages, where for the source, you can select main, and here you can select the root folder. You can use the root folder or you can use the docs folder, which I have just created. So I will select docs folder. Root folder is common folder for most of the other technologies in general. They have everything in the root there and then they commit it. So let's, from our project structure, we just created docs folder, right? So we'll use the docs folder and we can click save. So what it does is it sends a request to create a publish a page. to GitHub. And then it also shows that message. So he says that your site is ready to be published yet, but it's not yet published. Once it is published, you can see that your site is published message. You can wait for a few seconds and then again refresh the page. You should be able to see that. But let us see if we have completed all the steps here. Say here we have opened the settings tab. We have scrolled down to the GitHub pages section, and then in the source we have selected main. Then we have selected our docs and we have saved it. Now what we are doing, we are waiting for a minute to refresh the page. Okay, so let's go there and let us refresh the page once. Okay, it says no docs folder /docs folder. Yes, I understand the problem. We have missed one step there. We haven't built. So if you see here, so I don't see any docs folder. We have missed one step. That's the reason. We'll have to follow all the steps there. So what we'll do here is we'll build the project. Now that in the LWC service config.js, we have set this build directory. Okay. So, and what it says is this is going to be a default build directory. When we build the project, we can go to terminal and say npm run build. When you do this, okay, this is the command you can find in the package.json as well. Okay, so in the package.json, these are the different commands that you can run, you can build. In fact, already we have used a command called watch. So we can run npm build command, which is going to run this command for us, and it is going to create a directory here. So let me maximize my terminal and let me clear it once. And again, run the command for you to see the output. npm run build. So when you do this, it is going to create a docs folder for you. So currently it is building successful, and now you can see the docs folder here, which also will have to commit, which we have not committed. So what I'll do is I'll simply say npm add dot, sorry, let me cancel it. It is git add dot. Okay, let me see the status so that the docs folder is there. Now let us do the git commit -m. The same steps I'm repeating. If I would have done that earlier, then I need not commit again. Second commit, I'll do something. Or docs commit, whatever you want to put there. Okay, let us say git push origin master, or simply git push. It is going to push to that location.
Yeah, as and when it is pushing, if you look at the docs folder that is created, you'll see that all of your web components, I mean the different snake component you created, the app component, none of it is really shown. It is just 5 files, out of which 2 are resources. You have your index.html and 2 JavaScript files, that's it. So in the end, when you build your project, all your web component, logic, everything is bundled into 2 files. And if you can see, this is just like any other web project. So HTML and JS files can literally be hosted anywhere, which is really why we say that components built using Lightning Web Components can be hosted anywhere. So HTML and JS, you can even run it locally, post it on GitHub pages, deploy it to Heroku, build your own website. I mean, if you're posting it on services like GoDaddy, you can put it there. So pretty much a lot of flexibility given, because once you built it, it is just HTML and JS. All of the logic, all of the LWC engine, all of that complexity is bundled into just those 2 JavaScript files.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, these commands are the commands which are already there. Someone is asking for the GitHub commands. They're already there in the document. So you'll have to only follow these things and then you're done. So what I've done is I just use this command to add it. And then I've used the commit -m command. We'll update this document a little bit. And then we have pushed the command. So we'll add those commands. Thank you for reminding that, Nitish. I'll add those commands as well in the documentation. Okay, let's go ahead and see now if we got this. You can just go and click this snake game LWC and see if we got our latest push second commit. It's already there. Docs folder is there. Now we're all set. Let's go to settings once again and go down here, and you can see that your site is published. Okay, so let's go and click that, and you can see your page is available on GitHub. You can play, you can share this URL with your friends, colleagues, your kids, your partner, whoever. Okay, so that list goes on and on and on. You can just share it, and you can also improve the game. Aditya also shared the GitHub repository link there. So in fact, so here you can find the references where we will also put the Aditya's GitHub repository link from where you can get the latest code. Yeah, it's already there. So this is the reference code. You can get the complete features, and to learn, you can this is the blog which Aditya has written. He has done a session recently for the Salesforce developers on how to build the snake game using the Lightning Web Components. So and he also shared his experience on building that component in this blog. Please go back, and you can also read this document to learn more about it. And if you want to learn Lightning Web Components, so you can start your journey from here. You can use sforce.co/learnlwc. And if you want to get the complete documentation, easy to use documentation, which has a playground where you can play with the components dynamically while reading the documentation, you can also make the changes in the lwc.dev document there. So that also we have shared. So so if you go to the guide, and you can see the steps, go to some kind of example here. So you can read this and see for every example, we have given a playground. You make the changes here directly in the documentation while reading. You make the changes, you can see your component working. So it will be very interesting and easy to learn. So we have shared that as well. And what else? Yeah, if you want to see some samples which are already built with the industry best practices, then we also created some recipes for you. You can use these recipes as an example, and then you have these different kinds of samples which generally developers develop in their day-to-day development activity. So you can go to recipes.lwc.dev and get all those samples. So that's one thing we wanted to share before we conclude. And yeah, this slide, I really love it, and this was presented in our keynote as well by Aditya and Shashank. So you never know what open source project will be successful. So always keep building. So, and also make your code open source. It's going to, that's how even we have built so many open source projects there. And then you can also improve the snake game more and more. You can take the code from there and you can also improve. This slide is little older, no worries. This is the this is referring to our today's session, but yeah, you can dive deep into open source by visiting this bit.ly site. So take a note of it, bit.ly/salesforce/osi 2020, and you can just take a screenshot if possible. And yeah, Aditya has pasted the link there. With that said, we will conclude the workshop. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to take questions. Most of the questions are answered during this session, and Aditya also answered some of the questions in the chat as well. So if you have any questions, we can answer your questions. Otherwise, we are good to go.
Sir, is there any other games we have to simulate using this platform, sir? Any other like this game?
So basically, literally, so fundamentally, this platform, as I said, is built for building the enterprise grade application. Okay, so we have built games, which is a very simple application. Literally, you can build any kind of game. So you can try building, say, Tetris. You can try building, say, what we call building blocks. So all kinds of games you can build. But again, this platform is not for building the games. We took games because it will be interesting for you and easy to learn, right? So,
Sir, can
but
you
yeah.
please suggest any platforms to study for developing this type of applications? Reference.
So I can say, as a big lover of web components, I can say this is the best platform for me, at least.
Sure, sure.
Being worked on Java for so many years.
Sure, sir, sure.
Yeah, but
I
yeah.
think there have been multiple surveys done on the existing web components frameworks out there. Blogs have also been released comparing Lightning Web Components to other frameworks,
Okay.
and all of them seem to think LWC has a lot of potential, and it is one of the very, very few frameworks that offer enterprise grade support.
Okay.
So even though there are other frameworks out there which we really don't want to get into low level comparison,
Okay.
just know that there are very few for enterprise grade, and LWC is being recommended.
Okay.
And like I mentioned in the beginning, Salesforce is like the world's #1 CRM, and all of our customers are using Lightning Web Components. So that's a huge number
Okay.
of people.
Okay.
And it is open source. And even
Yes,
though
yes.
we launched it last year in January, 5 million components have been built. And because it is open source, our customers, our developers have been
Okay.
actively contributing to the framework. So I would say in a year or two, I think it would be a lot better than what it is right now. Already it is very good.
Okay.
And because of all the contributions we are getting in, I think we should see LWC picking up a lot of traction everywhere.
Since I was working for past 10 years in open source, related to programming field, but this is a new field for me. That is web component is my new field. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot from you people. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the session.
Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
Okay. I
So
think,
everyone is asking for a recorded video of this workshop. I mean, we'll talk to the organizers and see where are they going to post the recordings. We have no clue as of now. But if you look at the blog post, or for that matter, if you go to the GitHub repo that I shared with you, it should contain a link to a YouTube video, which again covers almost the same thing, how to build this entire snake game. So go to the GitHub repo, go to the README file, and you'll see how to build. And there is already a video available out there on YouTube. And this workshop went on for 3 hours because we explained everything in quite a deep way. And the YouTube recording is just around 1.5 hours, so it is very crisp. So you can definitely visit that. So people are asking for the YouTube video. This is the YouTube video. 1 second. This is the YouTube.
yeah, and yeah, this is only one it's a small sample. Even Aditya was showing some Fossil, right? All the things that we have built. We have built a quiz app. We have built other apps as well. You can visit that, search for Fossil there, and then sorry, Fostive there, and then you can find more apps. We'll keep on adding some new apps as well, which will be very interesting. So yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Is it a question or maybe, yeah, someone, Arun says most enterprise grade websites are built using Java.
Yeah, now it is changing primarily
Yeah.
because Java is a server-side program and your pages are rendered on the server side, which means it is completely dependent on the server and the browser just shows the output. But I think the whole enterprise industry, and I would say the industry itself, is moving more towards front end. So majority of the heavy lifting is being done by the browsers right now. So if you take things like Facebook or Gmail, they are no longer, or even YouTube for that matter. If you would go to the source code of YouTube, inspect element and look at it, YouTube is also using web components. So I would say most enterprise grade websites were built on Java, but now I think almost everyone, Facebook, Gmail, YouTube, they are moving more towards front-end technologies and web.
We can probably call it as a transitioning phase at the moment, but yeah, there are still many applications which are implemented using Java, but yeah, transitioning is happening. Cool. Any other questions before we go? So someone says business logic exposed to customers might take a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, there are best practices around what kinds of logic goes into the front end versus what kinds of logic goes into the back end. I mean, of course, if you have data, there is still a server involved. But your page as such is not rendered by the server. It is rendered by the client. And your business logic exposes APIs that can then be consumed by the front end or Lightning Web Components. What complements well with LWC? If you're talking about what backend complements well with LWC, the tool that we give out, the Create LWC app, it gives you a provision to create a backend Express server. So I would say that complements well, but since LWC is just a UI framework, you can feel free to plug in any backend of your choice.
I'd like to add more to it. LWC was originally created as a front end for our Salesforce. So we have a kind of front end framework called Lightning Framework. So it was originally created for the Lightning Framework, and then we have open sourced it by the name with the name Lightning Web Components because it's all based on the web components there. And as Aditya said, it can be used with literally with any kind of other frameworks. So in the slides also, Aditya was showing the different kinds of frameworks, whether it's React or other things as well. So you can complement each other with the each of those things. So it can work well with any other frameworks as well. So Aditya, there's one question. It says, I know both mean and MERN. So any backend, right? How it is different from Blazor?
It is any backend that you can use. I mean, in both mean and MERN, I'm guessing N means Node.js. So even with LWC, you can use Node as a backend. I have no clue what Blazor is. So I won't be able to do that. Oh, C#. I mean,
okay.
The bindings, the syntactical wise, if you look at C#, I mean, I haven't worked in C# for about 7 or 8 years. Back when Windows apps was a thing, I used C# to build some Windows apps. And there are some similarities in terms of how binding works in C# and Lightning Web Components. But other than that, I think fundamentally both of them are different in terms of architecture, LWC and C#. So can't really compare because it is not an apples to apples comparison. But yeah, syntactical wise, I mean, to understand how binding works and how you create one file for business logic and one file for your front end, that is HTML, I think you should be able to pick up LWC very easily if you know C#.
Awesome. Okay, I see more people. They are going to dig more deep into it and are going to learn. It's really interesting to see such kind of comments here. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, with that said, I think that does one of the last questions. So yeah, with that said, we are well in time. Are we in time? Maybe a little excess, but thank you so much for all your patience and following hands-on with us and completing this exercise. Thank you again. Thank you, Aditya.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.